The sun hung low in the Arizona sky, casting long shadows across the dry land as Jacob Miller rode his horse along the dusty trail running through his ranch. He had traveled this path many times in his life, yet today it felt different. Maybe it was the heavy silence, or maybe it was the strange feeling in the air that he could not explain. Jacob was not a man who believed in signs or hidden meanings. He believed in work, in early mornings, in caring for his cattle, and in doing what needed to be done. But for some reason, he felt something new waiting for him that day. His ranch stretched across miles of quiet land, fenced in by worn wooden posts and surrounded by distant mountains. Jacob had lived here since he was born. His father raised him on this land, teaching him how to ride, how to read the weather, and how to fix almost anything with his hands. But after his father passed away the year before, the ranch felt different, emptier, heavier, and too quiet. Jacob spent more hours alone than ever, working from sunrise to sunset with only the wind and the cattle for company. As he guided his horse toward the canyon edge to check on the herd, Jacob noticed something unusual. Under a wide mesquite tree sat a small figure, still as stone. From a distance, he thought it might be an abandoned blanket, or maybe a traveler resting. But as he rode closer, he realized it was a person, an elderly woman, sitting quietly with her back straight and her eyes on the horizon. Jacob slowed his horse, unsure of what to expect. Visitors were rare here. Most people did not wander this deep into the ranch unless they were lost or needed help. He stopped a few steps away from her and cleared his throat softly so she would know he was there. She did not flinch or seem surprised. Instead, she turned her head slowly and gave him a calm, steady look, as though she had been expecting him. She was dressed in simple clothing, an old patterned shawl around her shoulders and a long brown skirt touching the dusty ground. Her hair, long and gray, was tied with a thin strip of leather. Beside her lay a woven bag and a small wooden carving that she held gently in one hand. Her face was lined with age, yet her eyes were warm and strong. Jacob felt unsure of what to say. He was not used to strangers on his land, especially not ones who appeared without explanation. "Ma'am," he said softly, trying to be respectful. "Are you all right? Do you need help?" The woman nodded once, slowly, like she was greeting an old friend rather than a stranger. Her voice, when she spoke, was soft but carried a firmness that made Jacob listen closely. "I am well," she said. "I have traveled far. I needed a place to rest." Her words were simple, but there was something meaningful behind them. Jacob sensed that she was more than just a tired traveler. Though he couldn't explain how he knew, he dismounted from his horse and stepped closer, keeping a gentle tone. "This land belongs to me," he said. "You're on my ranch, but you're welcome to rest if you need to. Are you lost?" The woman's eyes lifted to his face, calm and steady. "No," she said. "I am not lost. I came here because the land guided me." Jacob had heard many stories growing up about the Apache people and their deep connection with nature. He respected those stories, though he never expected to meet someone who lived by them. She seemed like someone from another time, someone who carried history in her voice and memory in her eyes. He looked around the quiet canyon and then back at her. "Do you need water? Food?" She shook her head gently. "I have enough for now," she said. "I only need a quiet place for a few days. My journey has been long." Jacob's mind raced with questions, but he could see she was tired. Her shoulders drooped slightly, and the way she sat told him she had been walking for many days. He felt something inside himself soften. His father had always taught him to help those who needed it, especially travelers in the harsh desert land. Leaving her here alone did not feel right. "You can stay," he finally said. "There's space in the barn, or you can rest here if you prefer. I won't bother you." The woman smiled, not a big smile, but a small, peaceful one that seemed to carry gratitude. "Thank you," she said. "You have a kind heart." Jacob felt a strange warmth in his chest at her words. He wasn't used to people saying things like that. Most of his days passed without much conversation or deep thought. He simply worked and slept and did what needed to be done. But something about this woman stirred feelings he didn't quite understand. He offered her a hand to help her stand, but she shook her head and rose slowly on her own, carefully gathering her woven bag and the wooden carving. Once she was standing, Jacob realized how small she was, as though the desert wind could lift her. Yet there was strength in her posture, a quiet power he couldn't ignore. "What's your name?" Jacob asked gently. She looked at him for a moment, then replied, "My name is Nita." It was a simple name, but it suited her. It sounded soft yet strong, like the desert wind. Jacob introduced himself in return. "You may rest on my land as long as you need," he said. "If you'd like, I can show you where the barn is. It's cleaner than it looks, I promise." Nita gave a small nod, trusting him easily. As they walked back toward the ranch, Jacob noticed she moved slowly but with purpose, as though each step had meaning. She didn't ask many questions, nor did she look around in surprise. It was as if she already felt at home. When they reached the barn, Jacob opened the door for her. Inside was enough open space, a clean corner with blankets, and a small wooden stool. Jacob apologized for it being simple, but Nita only smiled. "This is more than enough," she said. "The land is peaceful here." Jacob felt strangely proud, though he wasn't sure why. He showed her where she could fetch water, and told her she was welcome to walk around the ranch as long as she didn't go too close to the cattle fences. Nita listened carefully, nodding with understanding. As the evening light faded, Jacob returned to the house but found himself glancing back toward the barn. He wasn't sure why he felt such curiosity about her. Maybe it was because she appeared out of nowhere, or maybe it was the calmness she carried with her. He tried to tell himself she would only stay a few days, and then she would move on. But deep down, he knew this meeting was not ordinary. That night, as he sat on his porch under the stars, Jacob thought about her words again. "The land guided me." He didn't know what that meant, but it lingered in his thoughts like a whisper. He looked out toward the barn, where a faint glow showed that Nita had lit a small lantern. She was there, quiet and peaceful, resting after her long journey. Jacob felt a strange comfort knowing she was close by. It had been a long time since anyone had stayed on his land. And somehow, her presence made the ranch feel less empty. He didn't know yet that this simple decision to let her stay would change everything in his life. He didn't know that the quiet woman he found under the tree carried stories, wisdom, and a message that would shift the way he saw himself and the world. But for now, he simply sat under the stars, letting the desert night wrap around him, unaware that a new chapter of his life had already begun. The next morning, the ranch woke up slowly under the soft golden light. Jacob stepped out of his house with a cup of warm coffee in his hand, expecting another quiet day. But as he looked toward the barn, he noticed movement. Nita was already awake, standing near the fence with a calm expression, as if she had been greeting the sunrise long before he stepped outside. Jacob walked toward her, curious about how she had slept. As he approached, he saw she was gently brushing one of his horses, a chestnut mare named Daisy. The horse stood perfectly still, enjoying every moment. Jacob knew Daisy didn't usually trust strangers so quickly, so it surprised him to see how relaxed the animal was with Nita. "You're up early," Jacob said softly. Nita looked up and smiled. "The day begins with the sun," she said, "and the animals wake with it." Jacob nodded. "You're good with horses," he said. "Most people can't even get close to Daisy. She's picky about who she trusts." "Trust Prophet." Nita placed a gentle hand on the horse's neck. "Animals feel our energy," she said. "They know when a heart carries softness." Jacob wasn't sure how to respond to that. She spoke in a way he wasn't used to, yet everything she said seemed to make sense, like she understood things on a deeper level than most. They spent a few minutes in quiet, watching the sun slowly rise. Jacob finished his coffee and set the cup aside, ready to begin the day's chores. He didn't expect Nita to follow him, but she did, walking with slow but steady steps. "You don't have to work," Jacob said. "You're resting here." She gave him a warm glance. "Resting does not mean doing nothing," she replied. "Helping brings peace to the spirit." Jacob didn't argue. If she wanted to help, He wasn't going to stop her. Besides, a little help on the ranch was always welcome. He showed her how to carry feed to the horses and how to check the water troughs. To his surprise, she already seemed to know what to do, moving with a sense of understanding that came from years of being close to nature. Jacob found himself watching her more than he expected, not out of worry, but because he admired how calmly she moved through each task. Later in the morning, they walked toward the far side of the ranch where Jacob kept the older cattle. The path was long and dusty, but Nita walked without complaint. She studied the land carefully as they walked, as if reading something hidden in the hills and dry grass. "This place carries old stories," she said suddenly. Jacob looked at her, unsure of what she meant. "Stories?" "Yes," she said. "The land remembers. Long before fences and roads, people lived here with respect. Every hill, every tree, every wind held meaning." Jacob had heard something similar from his father when he was a boy. His father used to say that land wasn't something a man owned, but something he borrowed. Hearing Nita speak the same way brought a strange comfort. "Did you grow up around here?" Jacob asked. Nita shook her head. "My people live not far from these lands," she said. "But my journey has taken me many places. I follow the path my heart shows me." Jacob didn't ask more. He sensed that she shared only what she wanted to share, and he respected that. When they reached the cattle, Jacob noticed one of the calves limping. He sighed, kneeling next to it to examine the leg. Nita gently placed her bag on the ground and knelt beside him. "It's a small cut," she said, "but it will get worse if not treated." Jacob nodded. "Yes, I'll clean it when we get back." But Nita shook her head and opened her woven bag. Inside were small bundles of dried plants. Wrapped carefully, she picked one, crushed a few leaves in her hand, and mixed it with a little water from a small flask. The mixture turned into a soft paste with a strong but pleasant smell. "This will help with healing," she said. "It has been used for many generations." Jacob watched as she gently applied the paste to the calf's cut. The animal calmed down under her touch, its breathing slowing. Jacob felt a mixture of admiration and curiosity. He had never seen someone work with such patience and certainty. "You know a lot about plants," he said quietly. She nodded. "My grandmother taught me," she said. "She knew how to heal with what the earth provides. I carry her teachings with me. I carry her teachings with me." Jacob felt a quiet respect for her. She wasn't just a traveler. She was someone who carried years of wisdom, passed down through her family. As the day went on, they worked side by side. Jacob didn't feel the usual heaviness he carried. Normally, he worked alone, lost in his thoughts and worries. But with Nita beside him, the day felt lighter, easier. There was something about her presence that brought calm, even during tiring tasks. During lunchtime, they sat under the shade of a tall oak tree near the creek. Jacob shared his food with Nita, simple bread, fruit, and cheese. She accepted it with gratitude, taking small, slow bites. After a few minutes of silence, she spoke softly. "You carry sadness," she said. Jacob froze, surprised by her words. She nodded gently. "It sits heavy on your shoulders. You try to hide it, but the heart cannot hide from the earth." Jacob swallowed hard. He hadn't spoken to anyone about his father since the funeral. People in town offered their condolences, but nobody truly understood. They saw him as strong, capable Jacob the rancher, who could handle anything, but inside, he felt lost, as if he were walking without direction. "My father passed last year," Jacob said quietly. "He ran this ranch before me. Everything I know, he taught me. Now, it feels like I'm doing it all wrong." Nita listened with soft eyes. "Loss does not mean weakness," she said. "And carrying a legacy does not mean copying the past. Your path is your own." Her words touched something deep inside him. Jacob looked down at his hands, rough from years of ranch work. "I don't want to lose the ranch," he said. "But sometimes, I feel like I'm failing, like the land is slipping away from me." Nita placed a gentle hand on the ground beside her. "The land does not slip away," she said. "It waits. It listens. It responds when a person cares from the heart." Jacob didn't know what to say, but somehow, her words made him feel lighter, as if someone finally understood his fears. After lunch, they walked back toward the ranch house. The afternoon sun was warm, and a soft breeze carried the smell of sage and dust. When they reached the porch, Nita paused and looked at the distant hills. "This place has a strong spirit," she said. "You should not carry its burdens alone." Jacob leaned on the wooden railing. "I guess I've been alone for a long time," he admitted. "Since my father left, it's just been me and the animals." Nita looked at him with a kind expression. "You are not alone now," she said simply. Something about her words warmed Jacob's heart. It had been a long time since someone had spoken to him with such sincerity. He nodded quietly and thanked her for helping him through the day. Over the next few days, the same pattern continued. Jacob woke early, expecting to begin his chores alone, but every morning, Nita was already awake, standing near the barn or sitting quietly with her wooden carving. She joined him in feeding the animals, checking fences, and organizing supplies. Sometimes she told him stories, gentle, thoughtful tales about her tribe and the old ways. She spoke of nights under the stars, elders who taught wisdom, and children who learned to read the signs of nature. Her stories weren't loud or dramatic. They were calm, slow, and full of meaning. Jacob found himself listening more than talking. In return, Jacob shared small pieces of his own life. He told her about his father teaching him how to ride, how he learned to mend fences, and how he struggled with loneliness after his father's passing. Nita listened without judgment, always offering a few quiet words that eased his worries. Through these conversations, a bond slowly grew between them, not forced, not rushed, but natural, like two rivers meeting in the middle of a valley. Jacob realized he looked forward to seeing her each morning. Her presence made the ranch feel alive again. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Jacob noticed Nita sitting on the porch steps, carving something out of wood. Her hands moved slowly, shaping every detail with care. Jacob sat beside her and watched. "What are you carving?" he asked softly. She held it up for him to see. It was a small figure, simple, but beautifully shaped. "A symbol of continuity," she said. "A reminder that life moves forward, and stories continue." Jacob nodded, feeling the truth in her words. Somehow, everything she said made him see the world differently. As the night settled in, and the stars began to appear, Jacob realized something important. Nita had come into his life when he needed someone the most. She didn't replace his father. She didn't fix his problems magically, but she brought calm where there had been chaos, understanding where there had been confusion, and warmth where there had been loneliness. Her presence was a gift he had never expected. In the days that followed, the bond between Jacob and Nita grew in quiet, steady ways. What started as simple conversations became moments Jacob looked forward to. He found himself listening more carefully, thinking more deeply, and noticing small things around the ranch that he used to ignore. It was as if the land itself felt different, softer, calmer, more alive, because of Nita's presence. One morning, Jacob stepped out of the house, expecting to see Nita near the barn or by the horses, but she wasn't there. He felt an unusual worry rise in his chest. The ranch was large, and if she wandered too far, she might get tired or lost. Even though the land was peaceful, it was still harsh for someone her age. He walked around the barn, checking the stables and the sitting area near the tree line. Still nothing. Then he noticed a faint sound coming from the small fire pit behind the house, the soft scraping of wood against wood. He followed the sound and found Nita sitting quietly on a log, carving something with a small knife. She didn't look surprised when he approached. Instead, she gave him a gentle smile, as if she knew he would eventually find her. "You're working early," Jacob said, relieved to see her safe. "The morning air is good for the spirit," she replied. "It helps the hands work with more truth." Jacob sat down across from her and watched her carve. She held the small block of wood with care, gently shaping it with precise movements. Her hands were slow but steady, as if each motion carried a part of her story. The crackling fire beside her added a calm rhythm to the moment. "What are you making now?" he asked softly. She held the carving toward the light. It was beginning to take shape, a rounded figure with small details forming around the edges. "It is a message," she said, "but it is also a reminder." Jacob didn't fully understand, but he trusted her. He had grown used to the way she spoke. Calm, thoughtful, sometimes mysterious, but always meaningful. As the sun rose higher, the two of them worked around the ranch like they usually did. Jacob repaired a broken fence, while Nita sorted tools in the barn with surprising efficiency. She worked slowly, but she worked with purpose. Each motion, whether sweeping the barn floor or arranging supplies, seemed to carry a sense of quiet respect. Around midday, Jacob noticed that Nita looked tired. Her steps were slower, and she paused more often to catch her breath. When she thought he wasn't looking, she pressed a hand to her side, as if feeling discomfort. Jacob walked toward her with concern. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. Nita nodded, but her expression revealed truth. "The journey has been long," she said softly. "Sometimes the body asks for rest." "Then rest," Jacob insisted. "You don't have to help today. Please sit. I'll get you water." She gave him a grateful look and sat down on a wooden stool in the shade. Jacob brought her a cup of cool water, and she drank it slowly. Her breathing calmed, but he sensed something deeper, something she wasn't saying. He sat beside her. "How long were you traveling before you came here?" he asked. Nita looked toward the distant hills as if remembering a faraway path. "Many days," she said, "and many nights. I followed the call of the land. It led me here. Why here?" Jacob asked. "Why my ranch?" She turned her eyes to him, full of quiet understanding. "Because you needed someone to remind you of your strength," she said. "And because the land wanted to speak to you again." Jacob felt a strange heaviness in his chest, not sadness, but something like realization. He had spent months fighting his own doubts, feeling alone, believing he was failing his father's legacy. Yet this woman, who had only known him for a short while, spoke as if she could see straight into his heart. Later that afternoon, Jacob walked Nita back to the house so she could rest. He offered her the small spare room inside, even though she had been staying in the barn. She hesitated for a moment, then agreed with a soft nod. Her steps were unsteady now, and Jacob gently guided her inside. "Lie down if you need to," he said kindly. "I'll check on the animals while you rest." She placed the wooden carving she had been working on beside the bed before closing her eyes. Jacob watched her for a moment. Realizing how fragile she looked, she had carried herself with such quiet strength. But now he saw how much the journey had taken from her. He stepped outside, feeling worry stirring in him, but he tried to focus on his chores. He fed the horses, checked the fences again, and made sure the cattle were safe. Yet his thoughts kept returning to Nita. As evening approached, Jacob returned to the house. Nita was sitting on the edge of the bed, holding the carving in her hands. She looked up when he entered. "I have something for you," she said. Jacob walked closer, unsure of what she meant. Nita held out the carving. It was now complete, a small wooden figure shaped like a symbol he didn't recognize at first. But then he saw it was similar to the one she had carried when he first met her. "What does it mean?" Jacob asked softly. Nita placed the carving in his hands. Her fingers brushed against his with warmth that felt deeper than simple kindness. "It means continuity," she said. "It means strength passes on, even when we think it has ended. It means the story does not stop with loss." Jacob looked at the carving carefully. The wood was smooth, shaped into a symbol that carried simplicity and beauty. He felt something stir inside him, a sense of peace, a sense of direction. Nita spoke again, her voice gentle but full of meaning. "Let your legacy live on, Jacob. Not through the land alone, not through cattle, but through kindness, through courage, through the way you touch the lives around you." Her words struck him deeply. For so long, Jacob had tied his whole identity to the ranch, his father's dream, his family's responsibility. Every failure felt like a mark against their legacy. But Nita's words opened a new way of seeing things. "A legacy is not built by fear," she continued. "It is built by love and truth. Your father's spirit walks with you, but your path is your own." Jacob felt a tightness in his throat. He lowered his head for a moment, trying to process everything she was saying. He had never heard anyone explain life in such simple yet powerful ways. Nita watched him quietly, letting the silence settle before she spoke again. "You allowed me to stay," she said. "That kindness matters more than you know." Jacob looked up at her. "I couldn't leave you out there alone," he said honestly. "It just felt right." "And it was," she replied gently. "Because your heart listens, even when your mind does not understand." Jacob sat beside her, holding the wooden carving carefully. "Nita," he said softly, "you've helped me more than you realize. More than I can put into words." She smiled, a small, peaceful smile that warmed the room. "Then my journey was worth it." The next few days were quiet. Nita's energy grew weaker, but her spirit remained strong. She rested more often. Yet she still found time to sit outside in the sun, listening to the wind, watching the ranch with gentle eyes. Jacob stayed close, making sure she had everything she needed. Sometimes she shared more stories, short ones about her childhood, her grandmother, and the lessons she learned from her people. Other times, she simply sat silently, letting the stillness speak for her. Jacob found comfort in both moments. On one particular morning, Jacob woke early and walked into the spare room to check on her. Nita was sitting by the window, watching the sunrise. She turned her head and smiled at him. "The light today is strong," she said. "It brings a message of peace." Jacob nodded, sitting beside her. "How are you feeling?" "My body is tired," she admitted, "but my heart is full." They sat together in gentle silence as the sun climbed higher. Jacob felt something changing, something he couldn't describe, but he knew it was important. Nita's time with him had been more than just a visit. It had been a journey of healing for both of them. He looked down at the wooden carving she had given him. It rested on the windowsill, catching the morning light. And in that moment, Jacob understood something deeply. The message she came to give him was not just words, it was a guiding light, a turning point, a reminder that he was not alone, and that his story was far from over. The next few days passed quietly, like soft pages turning in a book. The ranch felt different, not in a loud or dramatic way, but in a gentle way that touched everything. The wind seemed calmer, the mornings brighter, and even the animals acted more peaceful. Jacob noticed these changes, yet he knew the greatest change was happening inside himself. Nita spent most of her time resting in the small room Jacob had prepared for her. She still smiled, still spoke with her warm voice, but her strength was fading. Jacob could see it in the way she moved, in the way she held onto the wall for balance, and in the way she took longer to stand from the bed. He felt a deep worry growing inside him, though he tried not to show it. Each day, Jacob checked on her several times. He made her tea, brought her warm blankets, and made sure she ate even a little. He didn't want to lose her. She had become more than a visitor, she had become a guiding presence, a peaceful light in his life. One evening, as the sun was settling behind the hills, Nita called for Jacob. He went into the room and found her sitting with the wooden carving in her lap. Her eyes were gentle, but he could see sadness there, as though she understood something he didn't want to face. "Jacob," she said softly, "come sit with me." He sat down beside her, trying to hide the fear in his chest. Her voice was softer than before, but still steady. "There is something I must ask of you," she said. Jacob leaned forward slightly, giving her his full attention. "Anything," he said. "I want to see the high ridge," she whispered. "The place where the valley meets the sky." Jacob felt a pinch of worry. The ridge was a short walk, but it was steep in some parts. He wasn't sure she had the strength for it, but when he looked into her eyes, he knew this was important to her, something she needed. not just wanted. We can go in the morning, Jacob said gently. When the sun is soft and the air is cool. Nita nodded slowly. Yes, she said. Morning will be good. That night, Jacob barely slept. He kept thinking about the ridge, about the way Nita's voice sounded, and about the weight of her request. Something inside him whispered that the next day would be different from all others. He tried not to think the worst, but his heart already knew. When the first light of dawn touched the sky, Jacob went to Nita's room. She was awake, sitting on the edge of the bed, dressed in her shawl and holding her woven bag. Are you ready? She smiled a small, peaceful smile. I am ready. Jacob helped her stand and supported her arm as they walked out of the house. The morning air was cool, carrying the fresh scent of sage and distant rain. The sky was painted with pale colors, soft pinks, gentle oranges, and a quiet blue that promised a clear day. They walked slowly toward the ridge. Nita's steps were careful, and Jacob made sure she never lost her balance. The path curved gently upward, passing by rocks, wild grass, and a few small trees that had survived years of wind and sun. As they walked, Nita looked around with eyes full of appreciation. This land breathes with memories, she said softly. I can feel them, Jacob nodded. It's always been home, he replied, even when it felt empty. It is not empty now, she said, giving him a kind glance. It took nearly twice as long as usual to reach the ridge, but Jacob didn't rush. He let her take her time, stopping whenever she needed to rest. When they finally reached the top, the valley stretched out in front of them, like a painting, wide, quiet, endless, and full of warm morning light. Nita took a deep breath, her eyes shining with something Jacob couldn't describe. Peace, gratitude, completion. This is a good place, she whispered. The spirits are gentle here. Jacob placed his hand on her shoulder to steady her. Do you want to sit? She nodded. Jacob helped her lower onto a smooth, flat rock near the edge of the ridge. The view was breathtaking. The first rays of sunlight touched the hills and fields, glowing in soft gold. It was the kind of beauty that made a person feel small in the best way. Nita closed her eyes for a long moment, letting the wind brush her face. When she opened them again, she looked at Jacob with a deep calm. My journey ends here, she said quietly. Jacob felt his chest tighten, his throat grew tight, but he didn't interrupt her. He simply listened, even though his heart felt heavy. You have given me kindness, Nita said. More than you know. You gave me a place to rest, a place to share my stories, and a place to finish my walk. That is a gift. Jacob shook his head softly. You've given me more than I've given you, he said. You helped me see things clearly again. Nita reached into her woven bag and pulled out her original wooden carving, the one she carried when Jacob first met her under the mesquite tree. She placed it gently in his hands. This, she said, is my gift to you. Let it remind you that love, strength, and courage continue. Let your legacy live on through the good you choose to do. Jacob held the carving tightly. I'll keep it, he said quietly. Always, Nita smiled. It was the softest smile he had ever seen on her face, filled with peace and acceptance. The wind grew quiet around them. The sun rose a little higher. And in that calm, gentle moment, Nita closed her eyes. Her breathing slowed, then softened, and finally faded into the silence of the morning. She passed away peacefully, just as she lived with dignity and calm. Jacob sat beside her for a long time, feeling a deep ache in his heart, but also a softness he couldn't explain. There were no loud cries, no dramatic moments, just the quiet truth of life completing its circle. When he finally stood, he took a deep breath and lifted Nita gently into his arms. He carried her down the ridge slowly, taking the same path they walked together just an hour earlier. The ranch was silent as he returned, as if honoring the moment. Jacob chose a small hill near the house, one that caught the first light of every sunrise. It felt right. A place where the sky touched the land in warmth and softness. With patience and respect, he prepared the resting place. He laid Nita there with her woven bag and a few small flowers he collected from the valley. As he stood there, he whispered, "Thank you." The ranch felt different after that day. Not empty, but full. Full of memories, full of lessons, full of a gentle presence that stayed even though Nita was gone. In the weeks that followed, Jacob found himself working with new purpose. He repaired old fences, planted new grass for the animals, and began small improvements he had been avoiding for months. Every morning, he walked to Nita's resting place, greeted the sunrise, and took strength from the quiet hill. People in town noticed the changes in him. He spoke more kindly. He listened more deeply. He carried himself with a calm confidence. Slowly, Jacob opened the ranch to others. He invited young people from the community to learn how to care for the land and the animals. He taught them everything he knew, skills from his father, and the wisdom he learned from Nita. When they asked why he was doing this, he smiled and said, "Because stories continue. Because strength continues. Because kindness continues." Years passed, and the ranch became known not only for its land, but for the lessons it offered, for the sense of peace it gave to everyone who visited. And in Jacob's home, on the mantel above the fireplace, sat two small wooden carvings, the one Nita carried when she first arrived, and the one she carved for him before she left this world. Whenever Jacob looked at them, he remembered her soft voice, her gentle presence, and the message she gave him on the ridge: "Let your legacy live on." And through every life he touched, every lesson he shared, and every kindness he offered, her words continued quietly, beautifully, forever.